Ooh, Aaron Rodgers might be back, baby. Welcome to Fantasy Football Today, presented by BetMGM, the sportsbook born in Vegas. The Jets covered last night, big time, 24-3 winners over the Patriots. But also today, starters sit for a much more exciting slate than what we had yesterday. Look at these games. Denver at Tampa Bay. Can you trust Mike Evans going up against Surtain? Baltimore at Dallas. Houston at Minnesota. Philadelphia at New Orleans. Miami at Seattle, Detroit at Arizona, San Francisco at the Rams. I've got some tough choices here. I haven't made it yet. What is going to be the game of the week? We are going to have to find out. Adam Azer here with Jamie Eisenberg and Dave Richard. And boy, you got to love seeing your friend for the first time. And he looks at you and he says, wow, you look awful. So thank you, Jamie.
Happy to oblige.
Yeah, I have a mustache. I think it's growing in actually a little bit better since last night. It's growing on me. I feel distinguished with this thing.
Did you go to school yet?
No, he takes the bus. I don't go into school.
Well, that was part of the bet. You had to go to school.
No, first of all, nope, that was not part of the bet.
Yeah, it was.
All right, you know what? Maybe they have swim lessons today. Maybe I'll go to swim with the mustache. We'll see. Actually, no, I think I'm going to shave it for HQ. I don't want to go on HQ with.
No, you have to go on HQ like that.
He's got HQ and he's got CBS Sports Network today, which means everybody watching and listening has HQ and CBS Sports Network today.
You better keep.
Everybody promises to watch. Will you keep the mustache?
Yeah, sure.
All right.
You know what? I'm fine with it. I like it now. Okay, let's start with Jets and Patriots, 24-3. The Jets had the ball for 40 minutes and 4 seconds. An absolute nightmare for Ramondre Stevenson. I haven't even looked at my Stevenson league, but I think he probably had 0.3 fantasy points. So he had 23 rushing yards and a fumble. So this just nothing went right. He also briefly left with an injury, but he seems fine. But I think the Jets are the big story here. First of all, Aaron Rodgers looking really good, and Rodgers scoring 25 points. He's 68% rostered. He gets Denver next week. But then I also am seeing a lot of feedback, Jamie, about Breece Hall, and people wondering about this split with Braylon Allen and if we should be concerned about it. Hall's done nothing but have good games. But, what do you think about this?
I mean, it's capping his ceiling a little bit. When he's coming off the field for someone who's looked as good as Braylon Allen has, why would you not continue it for the Jets? Especially if they feel like they're a playoff team, they want to make sure Breece Hall is ready and willing and able to do everything that he's capable of by the end of the season, heading into the postseason. So they have a good 1-2 punch. It sucks for us because, this would, as we saw last year, be all Breece Hall, getting those touches, getting those goal line opportunities, getting everything that we like to see. He's still being productive. That's the great part of it. So it's not like we're suffering here because of it. It's not like a Rachaad White, Bucky Irving situation, for example, where, the rookie is coming in and maybe there's a concern for the job. So Breece Hall is locked into the starter's role. And if the game was probably more competitive, we may see Breece Hall getting a few of those touches that went to Braylon Allen. But they're being smart with it. They're using him in the middle of the game to give Breece Hall a little bit of a break. So is he going to return the value that you expected? Probably not to that ultimate level, but he's still been amazing. So it's not like we should be really complaining about it. I mean, think about the Christian McCaffrey fantasy manager right now. That's a whole different conversation for drafting one of the top running backs.
Didn't Breece Hall have like 18 PPR points?
Yeah. But
I mean, he played 50 snaps. He dominated third down snaps. He had the goal line carry. I think it's a good thing for Breece Hall because it can keep him healthy, to Jamie's point. I think it's a bad thing for the passing offense because now we're talking about a game where there were 27 runs between the two of these guys. And so if they're able to run like this week in and week out, how much throwing is Aaron Rodgers going to do from week to week? He's going to have to be as efficient as he was on Thursday.
Well, they're also not going to be playing a JV offense too.
Of course, and that also comes into play. But I'm thinking that when they get to games where it's back and forth, it's close, and Rodgers is still this good, Rodgers will be fine. Garrett Wilson will be fine. Breece Hall will be fine. Braylon Allen won't see the field nearly as much.
Oh, okay.
That part I disagree with. I think they like him a lot.
Okay, just got a note from Zach Rosenblatt. Robert Saleh is confident C.J. Mosley will be back for the Broncos game, so that's good. Morgan Moses, on the other hand, they're starting right tackle. Seems like he avoided.
Why do you want defensive players back? I'm going to be like Mel Kiper. I want all the defenses to stop playing.
You know what? I got more Jets DST shares than Javonte Williams shares.
I think Jets DST will be okay without C.J. Mosley against the Broncos.
Probably. No, I mean, look, I was actually a little nervous about the Jets DST. I didn't get rid of them or anything with this matchup, but they were missing a lot, but they came through with a huge game. So that was awesome. All right, what's fantasy relevant here? Garrett Wilson, Gonzalez did a pretty good job on him. Wilson had 9 targets, 5 catches, 33 yards, but he got that touchdown. That was great. He'll get Surtain next week. It'll get a little bit easier after that, but I don't know. You guys want to talk about him? Did we miss a buy low window, or do you think people still see the 33 yards and say he's not what I thought he was going to be? And what do you guys think?
There's still an absolutely wide open buy low window.
I don't know if I've got Garrett Wilson, I'm not going to be discouraged by what I saw in the game. Other than this, there were so many throws where the timing was off between Rodgers and Wilson, and you'd think that would be something that would be in lockstep by week.
Well, did you hear Rodgers after the game what he said about when he was asked about Lazard?
No, what did he say?
He was asked post game. Your first touchdown coming back was to Lazard last week. Your first touchdown at home was to Lazard. Just talk about the chemistry between the two. And he basically said he's like I know him so well. I'm hoping to get there with Garrett. So to me, that's encouraging.
Right. That's the point I was getting at, is that eventually they will be on the same page. And these Garrett Wilson games where he's getting, under 50 yards and a touchdown, he's going to be getting closer to like 75 to 100 yards and a touchdown. He's still dominating targets. He's doing fine.
But he's going to get shut down next week.
Maybe.
And so I would, if I'm trying to get Garrett Wilson, I'm trying to sway the Wilson manager. Look what he's done so far this season. It's been minimal production. Yes, he scored a touchdown. Great whoop-de-doo. He got 33 yards receiving. Here's Jamison Williams, who's been amazing. Let's make a deal.
I would actually start laying the groundwork now. And then when the Garrett Wilson manager sees a bad game against Denver, they'll say, okay, let's make this deal.
Of course.
That's what you do.
One thing that's actually going to work in his favor, they're using him in the slot a lot. 31% last night, 28% in week 2. I can tell you more about Surtain.
It's actually lower on the season compared to prior years, but it's
still a lot, though.
Yeah, it's over 25%.
All right, Surtain will sometimes fall. I watched this morning to see if he followed Metcalf into the slot, if he followed Pickens into the slot. Sometimes is the answer to that, but typically no. All right, any other thoughts on you? Like Ramondre Stevenson, this is the big fear. Do we have confidence in him going forward? He's at San Francisco next week.
Don't love that matchup. Don't love the matchup. I like the matchup against Miami a couple weeks later, but then he's got Houston. He's got the Jets again down the line. Tennessee could be a problem. It's going to be game script. When there's a game that the Patriots have where you think they're going to get blown out, you can't feel good about starting Ramondre Stevenson. You're going to do it unless you're loaded up running back. But he just terrible night. Barely had the opportunity to do it. They barely had the ball in the game, didn't they?
19,
play it that, like, it was like a 2-1, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So just one of those games for Ramondre. Kind of sucks.
You also have the potential of the quarterback change. Giving Drake May some opportunities last night. It feels like that Miami game could be his first start. Like, why would you start him against San Francisco? But the Dolphins game could be the first realistic start for Drake May, and then we'll see how this offense operates as well.
Okay, and I guess one good thing was he didn't really he still played Stevenson on third downs, not exclusively, but he's not off the field on third downs. Okay, that's it for Thursday Night Football.
Yeah.
Okay, Sunday morning, baby, 10 a.m. Tune into CBS Sports HQ. You'll see Jamie there smiling and giving you his fantasy advice. At 11:30 a.m. Eastern, flip it on over. Or you can keep it on HQ, and then on another separate screen, put up youtube.com/fantasyfootball today. Oh, wait, Jamie, you won't be there this weekend, will you?
I will not.
Okay, sorry, never mind. But usually you will. You can still watch HQ Sunday. But Dave...
Hey, wait. I'll be there on Sunday.
Dave will be on HQ Sunday. Heath and I will be on youtube.com/fantasyfootball today at 11:30 a.m. Eastern. So, you got that to do Sunday morning. We answer your questions for 90 minutes. youtube.com/fantasyfootball today. Another thing you can do is sign up for BetMGM. If you haven't done it yet, make sure you use the bonus code FANTASY, and you're going to get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Download the BetMGM app. Sign up using bonus code FANTASY. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game. You'll receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your bet loses. Just make sure you use the bonus code FANTASY when you sign up. News and notes real quick here. Jordan Love, 50-50 at this point. Justin Herbert, he practiced. He's looking good. So just since this will be our last show, Jamie, you're not gonna be on mailbag today, right, Jamie?
No.
Okay. If Jordan Love plays, Jaden Reed and Christian Watson would be what?
Number 3 receivers. It's not an easy matchup. Reed's banged up. Watson, I don't think, is worth trusting against that Titans secondary fully. So it's great news because they become closer to startable because you can't trust them at all with Malik Willis. But if it is Jordan Love out there and you're stuck, then like Christian Watson for me is better than the Jordan Whittington, Tyler Johnson, Jalen Naylor type of guys.
Is he better than Demarcus Robinson?
I would start Robinson over him just because I think there's a little bit more upside. But you get the point. Like the secondary, guys that were scrambling to pick up, I would still start Watson. Like I wouldn't be dropping Christian Watson to pick up those guys with Love seemingly beating the timetable.
We've started to see people dropping Watson in their leagues.
Yeah, I picked him up.
I think it's happening. Right. It's happened in ours, but also in a lot of posts that I get on X, people are saying, oh, Christian Watson's available. How much fab should I spend on him? And you can go after him because I think Jordan Love will be back for the majority of the year. At least I hope so. And if he's healthy, if Watson's healthy, man, he's got upside every single week. Doesn't matter who he plays.
Yeah, I'd like to see him play more snaps, playing about 2/3 of the snaps. But this is why you got to turn on the full Fab Report feature, because I bid $21 on Christian Watson in our FFT Open, and I got him. And the second highest bid was also $21, but I had the tiebreaker. It was a really great feeling to see.
Was
that.
the tiebreaker the mustache?
Yeah, it was worst mustache actually. Running back news: Jeff Wilson practiced in full. Raheem Mostert was limited. We'll talk about that game later. We're not expecting.
How many speeding tickets did you give out today?
We're not expecting Ken Walker. We're not expecting Joe Mixon or Damian Pierce at this point. Aaron Jones practiced in full. Rashad White was limited. Tank Bigsby was limited, so he might play this week. Josh Jacobs should play. Tajay Spears should play. Wide receiver news: Justin Jefferson will play. T. Higgins practiced yesterday. That's a good sign. Cooper Kupp not going on IR, you know that, but he's out. Jordan Addison missed practice. Nico Collins is going to play. St. Brown's going to play. Josh Palmer, expecting him?
Yes.
Josh Reynolds.
Not rostering him, but yeah, we're expecting him.
Denver's leading receiver by a mile, pun intended, is going to play this week. Josh Reynolds. Well, I shouldn't say that, but he practiced in full, so he's probably going to play. CeeDee Lamb's fine. Josh Downs going to play this week. DK Metcalf was back at practice. Keenan Allen's still out, though, so we're not expecting him. Then this was the big one, Dave. George Kittle. Hamstring injury. What on earth is going on in San Francisco? What are we supposed to do here?
He hasn't officially been ruled out, but if he doesn't practice on Friday, you know how that's going to go. But apparently he woke up and was sore, and his hamstring is tight, and they didn't want to push him on Thursday. And Kyle Shanahan, who gets absolutely no credibility with what he says about his players' injuries for the rest of this year, is putting the TBD on George Kittle. We'll see. If he ends up playing, he's a must start. If he doesn't play, it's going to be a big Brandon Ayuk week, at least target-wise.
And go get Juwan Jennings. I mean, that's the
yeah. That's a great call.
He's available in a lot of leagues. And just because I was doing the write-ups for the DFS lineups for this week, they're both really relatively priced in a good spot. Ayuk is not in the upper echelon of receivers on FanDuel and DraftKings. He's in the middle of the pack, which is great. And Jennings is basically free. So, you can build some lineups around those two guys because they will get fed targets. It's got to be an Ayuk week, man. If it's not, we're really in trouble because he's going to get fed targets. You've seen at least one receiver go nuts against this defense. And so hopefully this is Purdy to Ayuk. It puts a damper on Purdy, clearly, if he doesn't have all his weapons.
Parkinson, Freiermuth, or Gesicki is a question in our chat. So this would be a Kittle replacement in theory. Parkinson, Freiermuth, or Gesicki.
Well, let me ask you this question. As the Pittsburgh offense coordinator, no, I would probably just take a chance on Freiermuth with the hope that we see him still getting opportunities. Like Parkinson's tough to trust. He has probably the most upside with Higgins back. Gesicki's going to be in a shootout. A high-scoring game, mostly from the Cincinnati side.
Yeah.
I'd go with Jonnu Smith if he's out there.
It's a good call.
Skylar Thompson's going to be throwing short, quick passes, getting the ball out fast. They're not going to ask him to scan the Seahawks secondary. Say that 5 times fast. I think Jonnu Smith could have another 5+ catch game.
All right. And that's going to do. Taysom Hill's looking good. He was limited in practice. Jake Ferguson, we're expecting to play. Evan Ingram, I don't know. They seem like he had a chance to play, but then I don't know. It feels like they backtracked. I wouldn't expect Evan Ingram at this point. Their Monday night game. And David Njoku is likely out.
I just want to take a picture of you, Nando. Smile.
Yeah, go ahead.
Smile. There you go.
All right, we are going to take a break, and when we come back, we've got one question for each game, our favorite stack of the week, and beat the waiver wire, and then we'll get into the games. We'll be right back on FFT.
CBS Sports HQ, giving you college football coverage unlike anyone else.
We're talking Big Ten.
Pre- and post-game coverage.
Are you encouraged with the way that this team responded?
Along with breaking news.
A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
Highlights and expert analysis.
That streak could be in jeopardy here.
Sure. What was your main takeaway from this game? How impressive was his domination?
That really changed the football game.
Let's go ahead and have some more fun.
Another wild ending.
The chaos continues.
Turn to CBS Sports HQ.
I get the grossest comments about this mustache. It's really the things that people think of. One question for each game. Denver at Tampa Bay. Is it the best game on the slate? No, but it's an interesting one from a fantasy perspective. Rashad White or Mike Evans? Dave, who's a better flex?
Evans.
White.
Jamie? White? Do you guys like them? Are they in the top 24 at their respective positions?
Yes.
Evans just barely. White slightly ahead of Evans from a running back versus wide receiver standpoint. And if White, for whatever reason, is out, I would take Bucky Irving over Mike Evans too.
Okay. All right. Baltimore's at Dallas. Starter sit Isaiah Likely. And Dave, I'm going to give this to you because you wrote a very good breakdown of, it was really interesting, of how the Baltimore tight ends are used, the defenses they might see, and what that would mean. So starter sit Isaiah Likely.
I think he's a reluctant starter.
Well, that's the game of the week. Yeah. Get those tight ends in your lineups for the Ravens and the Cowboys. The mustache game of the week. Hey.
I thought you'd go Cardinals-Lions. Or Lions-Cardinals.
Yeah, that's a good one, too. It's tough.
Yeah, maybe you'll have two games.
New Orleans, I think, is going to be great also.
Yeah, I'm surprised that you made this one the game of the week.
I think Houston, Minnesota's got. I could go like quadruple game of the week this week, but I won't do
This
it.
one's the most intriguing.
All right. So, anyways,
there's going to be a team that has their playoff hopes like hanging by 4 threads if they lose this game. When they lose this game,
I don't know.
Cowboys, not so much. If the Ravens lose, they're in trouble.
Like the Cowboys will be 2-2 after next Thursday.
Yeah.
So they'll be fine. Anyway, you did right. It wasn't fake. He did write a very interesting story breaking down the tight end. So starter said Isaiah Likely, Dave.
I think he's a starter by default just because there aren't a lot of tight ends that you can look at and say, all right, these are locked in must-start guys. I think if they're chasing points, he's going to play. I think if they're running the ball well, I think he's not going to play, much less get targets. So it comes down to Derrick Henry, how effective he'll be. I think Henry can be effective against this defense. Their run defense got smashed last week. It was zone runs that got them. Henry's been super efficient on zone runs this year. Assuming the Ravens get the memo and that's what they do, and Derrick Henry gets going, you won't see much of Isaiah Likely on the field. Now, the only caveat is if Dallas can put up points, if their passing game is effective, and the Ravens pass defense hasn't been that good, so maybe they can, then that could force the Ravens' hand. Now they have to throw a little bit more, and that would put Likely on deck. But Likely's running short routes. His ADOT's real low. His route depth is real low. His big play in week 1, remember that big catch and run he had, came against a linebacker. The Raiders put defensive backs on him in week 2, and I think the Cowboys will probably end up doing the same thing. So I get nervous, even if there is passing, that Likely won't have a bunch of splash plays.
All right, I got 2 Likely questions.
The problem is who are you starting over Likely? Like this question, like there's no way you're starting Pat Freiermuth over Isaiah Likely.
Definitely not. And that's why he's still top 12 for me, is because I can't find 12 tight ends that I'd much rather start than Likely.
Cooper or Kincaid or Likely is this next question.
That's easy. I'd go with Kincaid.
It's a coin flip, but I would go Kincaid.
All right, next question. We'll go real quick here. Houston at Minnesota. Jamie, do you trust Stephon Diggs or Tank Dell?
They're both high-end number 3 receivers. I would imagine that if the Texans have their opportunity to get Diggs a big play or an opportunity to score, they will give him some of those chances going back to Minnesota. But it's hard to say either one of them is must start.
That's a good point. Minnesota so far, they've done very well against Neighbors and Ayuk. not well against Debo at 110 yards. Next game, Philadelphia at New Orleans. Dave, who are you starting Derek Carr over?
I am starting Derek Carr over Baker Mayfield. I am starting Derek Carr over Jared Goff. I'm starting Derek Carr over Jaden Daniels, Dak Prescott, and Patrick Mahomes. I think this is going to be a shootout. I think this is a game of the week candidate for sure.
Yeah.
That Eagles secondary is not great. They've allowed too many splash plays. What has Derek Carr done a lot of this year? Make splash plays. And I think that the Eagles will answer. I think they'll score on the Saints defense. So this has a high scoring game written all over it. I like Derek Carr. He's my number 8 QB this week.
Miami is at Seattle. Jamie, do you think we have any idea what to expect from the Seattle wide receivers, or are we still trying to figure that out?
I would think at this point you're starting the guys that you drafted if you needed to start them. For example, DK Metcalf should be in your lineup no matter what. Jackson Smith and the Jigba borderline starter, so 3 receiver leagues he should be in your lineup. And Tyler Lockett is absolutely more of a desperation play than anything else.
All right, Dave, Detroit at Arizona. Rank these 3 players as flexes: Jamison Williams, David Montgomery, James Conner.
Depends on your scoring system. Conner will probably be at the top of this list for both formats. I'll go Conner, Jamison, Montgomery if it's full PPR and half PPR. If it's non-PPR, I'll put the running backs Conner, Montgomery, and then Jamison.
Okay. Any hesitation against this run defense for Conner, or is he just an easy must start?
A little bit, but he gets the ball so much that he's going to be a top 15 running back. I have him 13th.
Okay. And finally, San Francisco's at the Rams. Jamie, Ayuk is the top receiver in this game. Who's the second best wide receiver in this game?
Demarcus Robinson.
What about if Kittle's out? Would you consider Juwan Jennings over Demarcus Robinson?
No, I would still take a chance with Robinson. Remember, this is the first game plan that they're putting in without both receivers because they went into last week with Kupp. So how many more designed throws are on the table for the game script early for Robinson? I would anticipate a lot.
All right. And now it's time for the Hellman's Stack segment where we discuss the quarterback and receiver duos to keep an eye on this upcoming weekend. Brought to you by Hellman's Real Mayonnaise. Mayo game. Be delicious. Dave, give me a QB wide receiver combo you like in week 3.
I'm positive you guys talked about this on Thursday's Start Sit episode, but Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase have a chance for a massive game against the Commanders. Look at what the Commanders allowed in week 1. 4 touchdowns to Baker Mayfield. Week 2, 2 passing touchdowns to Daniel Jones. And that's really good for Daniel Jones. So this Commanders defense, they can't get pressure on the quarterback. Their secondary isn't very good. This is a breakout game, an absolute smash spot for all of those Bengals players that you know and love. Joe Burrow kind of underwhelmed to start the year. Maybe he was okay last week. Big game this week. Big, huge game for Jamar Chase this week. And T. Higgins, if he comes back, if he plays, I don't think he'll be so bad either. He's a candidate to get you in the neighborhood of 13 PPR points.
Okay. So, yeah, Higgins is in the top 24 in the rankings. He is ranked right now, and I'm excited to get him in some lineups. I've been missing T. Higgins. This has been the Hellman Stack segment brought to you by Hellman's Real Mayonnaise. Just like these QB and wide receiver duos, tailgate snacking and Hellman's Mayonnaise make the perfect combo, bringing out the rich and creamy taste to all your game day dishes. So give it a try, and Mayo game day be delicious with Hellman's Real Mayonnaise. Shop at your local Walmart, Kroger, or grocery store and add some extra deliciousness to your game day dishes this football season. A little beat the waiver wire here. Geno Smith, if you don't already have him, you can start him this week. He's at Detroit and gets the Giants in weeks 4 and 5. So Geno Smith is available. I mean, it's so hard to trust Deshaun Watson. His next 3 opponents after this week, which is a good matchup in itself: Raiders, Commanders, Eagles. So Deshaun Watson and Geno Smith I have as beat the waiver wire quarterbacks if you need someone. And then at running back, Jamie, there's just so many backup running backs that have upside. It's you can't roster everyone. I get that. But I mean, I put Blake Corum on the list, Khalil Herbert, because Swift is struggling, Ty Chandler, Jaleel McLaughlin, although he's been horrible, Deontay Foreman, pretty much all the Chiefs running backs as strong as, or Steele is 80% rostered. Emmanuel Wilson. I saw Heath picking up a lot of Emmanuel Wilson. I don't know. What is there a hierarchy? Cam Akers. Yeah. Is there a hierarchy here?
I would probably start with Chandler just because we already saw Jones get banged up and he looked great against San Francisco. 8.2 yards per carry. I don't remember all the names you said. I'm sorry. Like Blake Corum is tough to trust right now because the Rams offense is just putrid. Like, can you really buy into him if he has to start? Like, it would just be a volume thing as opposed to, oh my God, he's going to be great. So he's somebody that's more left for the waiver wire. McLaughlin, you mentioned struggling.
I mean, do you think Khalil Herbert is someone who could start taking that job from Swift?
I don't know if they would outright bench DeAndre Swift.
Right.
They would certainly give Khalil Herbert more work. And you're starting like, when I first looked at it, I was like, who's a little bit like really off the radar that I can make start of the week this week. And the first place I went to was Swift. And then it was like, I can't really trust Swift because everything I read was they may be benching him at some point. So if he's struggling in the first quarter, Herbert got the goal line opportunity last week. They may start to give him more touches, and Roschon Johnson too. Eberflus talked about that. Bringing he brought up his name unsolicited, which you always know is something to keep an eye on when he was asked about Khalil Herbert. So I would hope that Swift does well this week, but it's tough to trust. Madison is still in that range too. Zamir White's struggling, so if that happens again, this is another great matchup. So Pierce has been very defensive of Zamir White. So he was asked what's wrong with the run game, and he's like, it's not Zamir, it's the guys up front. We got to block better.
Yep.
So we'll see if that continues. And then there was you mentioned the Chiefs. Look, if you have an open roster spot and any of them are available, why would you not pick them up just to see what happens? Not Keontae Ingram, but if P. Ryan's there, if Hunt is there, you mentioned Steele, who I think is the front runner. Any of them should be rostered because just in case one of them pops off, you'd like to be ahead of that as opposed to chasing it.
Hunt is still available in 55% of CBS Sports leagues. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is still available in 84%. He's a stash for an IR spot if you've got him available.
Oh, yeah. Not in my leagues. You don't have him available. I have a lot of Clyde now. All right, wide receiver. Roma Dunze is being dropped. I think he's 65% rostered, so that could be a long-term play for you.
His dad will go pick him up.
I was about to make the same joke. Roma Dunze's dad would pick him up. He posted a video of him being open on Twitter. Jerry Jeudy. Actually, I don't know Judy's roster percentage, but it was
above. It was like 66-67% on Tuesday. So
okay, those matchups
7% as of right now.
Giants this week, Raiders, Commanders, Eagles. That's pretty good for Jerry Jeudy. Darnell Mooney,
who's been their best receiver.
Yeah,
Cooper doesn't look right.
Darnell Mooney is, look, if we thought, all right, so London's going to lead the team in targets and Pitts is going to be next, maybe it's Mooney instead of Pitts. So you could pick him up. Josh Downs is coming back. And then I had Pat Freiermuth as a tight end. So
you forgot the biggest one of all.
Yeah, who did I forget?
The Bengals DST.
Oh.
They're at Carolina. I'm assuming Carolina's offense will be better than what it's been with Andy Dalton under center, but it's still not going to be great.
The Bears DST, great matchups coming up.
Rams in week 4, that's a good call. Carolina.
Jordan Whittington was another guy I wanted to talk, just briefly mention.
I feel like they're rostered in too many leagues, though. Bengals might be too. I don't know.
The Bears are like in the 50s.
You're right. Bengals are at 54%, or Bears are at 54, Bengals at 32.
You guys ready to do some starts? Sid?
Here people are really scared about the Bengals after what happened week 1 when we said go pick them up and start.
They have a bad defense.
They're bad, and their run defense is beat up.
Yeah, I think their pass defense might be pretty good. I'm not sure, but like their run defense is garbage. Again, I said it in week 1. They gave up the most yards per play in football last year, the Bengals. So they had a lot of improving to do before we started, streaming them. Denver is at Tampa Bay. And injury note on this one, Tampa Bay's starting defensive tackles have not been practicing, Vita Vea and Kalijah Clancy. And also, stat of the game, the Bucs are giving up the most receiving yards per game to running backs.
It's a little bit skewed.
It is, but it's like Brian Robinson, Antonio Gibson, David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs. They are giving up a lot of receiving yards, and they're missing their defensive tackles. On paper, it should be good.
Listen, if both guys are out, like right now I haven't started sit Javonte as a sit. I will be pulling him out of the column if both guys are not there. Not that I want to trust Javonte Williams, but the opportunity, the runway's clear. You don't have those two guys there. It's a totally different animal for them. They'll both be involved in the passing game, but they'll be able to run the ball much better.
I wish I believed that, but their run game is so bad, right? But
I'm nervous about it too.
All right, So if you pulled him out of the sit portion of the column, would he be in the top 24, Javonte Williams?
No, but they would be better flex options. Not McLaughlin. Javonte would be a better flex option. It just you saw some signs of hope after a miserable week 1. Like he was awful in week 1. Couldn't get worse. McLaughlin had more touches than him. It was bad. And then bounced back, did a lot in the passing game, which is what you're hoping for from Javonte. And really the Broncos running backs. You're hoping for them to be involved in the passing game. So with McLaughlin struggling, with Javonte coming off a better performance, and then you're taking away the strength of that Tampa Bay defense, like, yes, there should be an opportunity here for him to have a decent game.
Yeah, but it's only a better performance because he had 5 catches. He had 11 carries for 17 yards.
Oh, look, they can't run the ball.
Yeah.
But if you're running against Vita Vea and not running against Vita Vea,
that's a big deal.
Big deal.
Denver wide receivers. So are you any interest at all?
No.
Okay.
Not even in Josh Reynolds. I know he was worth 13 plus in PPR. We're not in the bye week section yet.
Let's just go. Sit Dulcich, sit Nix. Let's go to Baker Mayfield. All right. I think, Dave, you said you'd start Carr over him, but is Mayfield still a good start for you? Denver has seen the 3rd fewest pass attempts, but they allow the 8th fewest passing yards per attempt of such small sample sizes, obviously. But your thoughts?
Against Seattle, 19 fantasy points for Geno. Against the Steelers, 12 points for Fields. Fields could have had a little bit more than that if the penalties didn't come back where he hit Pickens. 1 on a touchdown, short touchdown, 1 on a deep ball. If those plays stood, then he would have gotten over 20 fantasy points, but not by much. I think this is that kind of game for Baker Mayfield. I don't think the Broncos offense will drive their side of the scoreboard. Baker should be comfortable in the pocket. Baron Browning might not play for Denver. That's a big deal. I think they will see Baker Mayfield have another game where he's attempting like somewhere between 22 and 27 passes. He'll complete a bunch of them. Maybe he gets to 2 touchdowns like he did last week. Could be a game like he had last week. So if you like that number for your fantasy team, then you start Baker Mayfield.
He's a low-end starter. We kind of got lucky last week with the rushing touchdown. And Geno got lucky in week 1 against Denver with the rushing touchdown. So I don't think this isn't a DFS day for Baker. I don't want to expect a huge game because what have we seen from them? Yes, you could say the almost production for George Pickens. It's going to be tough for Mike Evans. And we saw it last week that Baker can still get by throwing the ball without having to rely on Evans. Now, the top end play is not there, clearly, because Evans is a difference maker. But we're also talking about Evans 2 games with just 6 targets. And now Chris Godwin has returned to the spot where he is comfortable, and Baker is clearly comfortable leaning on him. So how much will they challenge Surtain? Are we expecting more than 6 targets for Mike Evans unless they're stuck?
Yeah.
And you expect them to be stuck?
It's stuck? What do you mean stuck?
Like chasing points in a situation where they need Mike Evans to save them in this game? Like, I don't expect that.
No, I think he'll see plenty of targets in the red zone. I think it's going to be like.
But you say plenty of targets in the red zone. He's got 12 on the season across the board. Like, where are they coming from?
It's true.
Evans or Higgins?
Higgins for me.
It's still Evans for me.
These are questions from the chat. Baker Mayfield or CJ Stroud?
CJ.
Kyler, Baker, or Carr?
Kyler.
Yep.
Okay. Every week,
that's how I'd rank those 3.
Every week I have in my super flex league, I have Dak, Goff, and Baker Mayfield. So it's going to be a tough decision every week. I'm going to sit Baker for Dak and Goff. All right. Rachaad White. He did miss a little bit of time last week, but he still played 71% of the snaps and he had a bad game. So Rachaad White. Yeah, we did Mike Evans versus Rachaad White earlier. And I actually forgot. Dave said White. No, Evans.
No,
I said Evans.
I would take either starting Tampa Bay running back over Mike Evans.
You would take Bucky Irving over Evans?
If White is out, I would start Bucky Irving over Evans.
Okay. I'm just assuming White's going to play because he's.
Yes, I would as well.
All right, where's he ranked?
Around
21st.
JSN or Rachaad White?
Rachaad White.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Rachaad White is I don't know what the 1 catch was all about last week. Baker only threw 19 passes. But he's usually pretty damn reliable in the passing game. And then Godwin is a must start.
He's still perfect on every target.
Really? 7 for 7?
Yep.
Unbelievable. Godwin's a must start. So Dave, you are higher on Evans. I think you have him 16th. Jamie has him 25th. Heath is the highest on Evans. But yeah, let's review. So week 1, DK Metcalf, 3 catches for 29 yards. Week 2, George Pickens, 2 catches for 29 yards. Both of them had 4 targets. Both of them were shadowed by Surtain. Now, Pickens had big fantasy production called back on penalties. But the point remains, Surtain's really good, and he's a factor here. So, I mean, yeah, go ahead, Dave. Make the case for Evans.
I'll always sit a bad receiver against anybody, certainly against a great cornerback. I'll sit a good receiver against a great cornerback. But one of my philosophies is great receiver versus great cornerback. It's almost like a tie when both players catch a ball. It goes to the offense. That's kind of how I feel about it here. And it's not like I've got Mike Evans top 10. Normally he'd be a top 10 guy. But he's 16th for me. I think he can still score. I think he can still get you around 60 or 70 yards. It's just a matter of can the big play and the touchdown that George Pickens didn't have last week stand for Mike Evans this week? I don't think Baker Mayfield is going to see Surtain on the field and go, oh, goodness gracious, I've got to throw away from him. He's going to be thinking more about Mike Evans, and he's got to get the ball to Mike Evans. And that makes me – the thing that worries me about Mike Evans and how many targets he's going to get has nothing to do with Surtain. It has everything to do with game script. Bucs could win this one 17-3. 2 safeties. That's how it's going to go down. It could be a game like last night, and that could mean that Baker Mayfield doesn't throw that much. That's why Baker isn't even higher for me in the rankings.
All right. Evans or Shaheed?
Shaheed.
I'll take Evans.
Rashad White or Jerome Ford, PPR?
White.
And that's pretty much it for those chat questions. You heard what they think about Evans. Definitely start. I did see Ayuk or Godwin. That was an interesting question. Love to start them both, but who would you guys take?
Godwin. This is why we don't have to. Why Baker doesn't have to rely on Evans. He has another elite receiver.
All right.
Fair point.
Let's take a break. Baltimore at Dallas when we come back on Fantasy Football Today. Baltimore is at Dallas. Baltimore passing game. They are 15th in pass rate. And they've been that way, each of the first 2 weeks, 16th in week 1, 14th in week 2. They are throwing. Lamar Jackson has 34 or more pass attempts in consecutive games for the 5th time in his career and the first time since 2021. That is really impressive. And meanwhile, Mark Andrews not really benefiting from it. Mark Andrews had a career low 22% target per route run rate in 2023. It is 10.8% right now. Mark Andrews is just not being targeted. Let's hope that turns around. I saw some research on Twitter. I think it was from Alfredo Brown about tight end targets, and they typically go up, week 3 and on. I don't know. Tight ends just don't get targeted that much in weeks 1 and 2. I think it was Alfredo. So as a position, we're hoping that comes true again. Lamar Jackson must start. Derrick Henry or Rashad White?
Henry.
Any interest in Justice Hill this week?
As a flex in PPR, yes.
You'd have to be desperate, though.
Justice Hill or Javonte Williams?
Javonte.
Derrick Henry or J.K. Dobbins?
Dobbins.
I've got Henry 1 spot ahead of J.K.
All right, Dobbins is at Pittsburgh.
That's what.
Baltimore wide receivers, it's just Zay Flowers. So how would you rank Flowers versus Mike Evans?
Flowers.
I've got Evans over Flowers.
All right, but he's like around 20th or so.
Targets have been there for him. Had a big week too.
Dare I say he's the focal point of the offense, Zay Flowers? 21 targets, nearly 30% target share.
I mean, look, he had a tough week 1 in terms of his yards, but 6 catches. And he bounces back in week 2 with a, relatively big game, over 16 PPR points. So I think this Cowboys defense has shown that they're not the same as we saw last year, especially after what we saw in week 2. They really played a beat up Browns team in week 1. So if they can't run, the Ravens can't run, which they haven't exactly been great at running the ball so far, then it's on Lamar again. And if it's on Lamar again, it's on Flowers again.
So I think it took until the 3rd quarter of week 2 for the Ravens to finally get their run game going, because week 1, you remember Derrick Henry had a touchdown, but his efficiency was terrible. He got off to a terrible start against the Raiders as well. And Zay Flowers was crushing it for those 6 quarters. And then in the second half last week, I think Zay scored. I think that might have been his only catch in the second half. I can double check it if you want me to. But this is what I was talking about with Zay Flowers all offseason, but it's turning out to work in his favor because the Ravens didn't come out of the gate, stomping over people with the run game. I think they'll be able to do that this week against Dallas, and net result will be Zay Flowers being good, not great.
Okay. But it's still worth starting. Baltimore tight ends. Dave talked about it earlier. Mark Andrews. I don't know. I mean, anyone to compare him to, but would you start Bowers over Andrews?
Yes.
Is Andrews in your top 6 this week?
No.
Okay.
He may have moved up there with pulling Kittle. I don't remember exactly.
Yeah, he's 7th with Kittle out for me.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, I just feel like most Mark Andrews managers probably don't have a second tight end and aren't making this decision. He's going to be started. But, do you expect double-digit PPR fantasy points from Andrews this week?
It's hard to say expect. I would put it in the hope category. It is interesting to see. I was looking, I have a couple leagues with Evan Ingram and trying to make some trades. And I think probably like 3 leagues, I saw the Andrews likely combination. People drafting both.
Yeah.
Or having both. And
Right.
you wonder if likely has a better game than Andrews, especially if it's another big game. Like, at what point are we saying start likely over Andrews?
Well, we already talked about likely, and Dave said, low end starter, start him over guys like Pat Freiermuth and Mike Gesicki and all that.
Right.
And you can start him over Dalton Kincaid, but I forgot. Dave,
No, I'd rather start Kincaid.
Jamie said they were close. All right, starters sit Dak Prescott. 2 straight games with fewer than 15 fantasy points at Cleveland, home against New Orleans. Baltimore so far. Patrick Mahomes, 15 fantasy points, but he had a 101.9 passer rating. Gardner Minshew, 15 fantasy points. Last year, they allowed the fewest fantasy points to quarterbacks. Starters at Dak Prescott.
So you mentioned your super flex league before.
Yeah.
And I would probably sit Dak.
I would too.
I knew you were going to say that. I'm gonna play the over under game.
It's funny you say that because that's the only thing that keeps me from saying Dak's an outright sit, is that Vegas expects this game to be high scoring, and hopefully that's the case. The problem is right now is Dak is missing on some throws, and just I throw out week 1. To me, week 1 was he didn't have to do very much.
Yeah.
It was Cleveland and it's very good defense, but which Baltimore defense going to show up? Because like you said, they did a good job in sort of keeping Patrick Mahomes from a huge game, but he was throwing the ball well.
Mm-hmm.
And then they played the Raiders. So it's a different situation. But Gardner still picked them apart. He just didn't get multiple touchdowns. So is the Ravens defense still as formidable as we've seen in the last couple of years? I mean, missing some parts, as we talked about, with the guys who left and the coordinator change. So this is a big test for both sides. I don't think Dak is an outright sit. Like, I have a decision to make. There was one magazine draft I did for another publication, and I only drafted Dak. And so I put in a claim for Baker because he's still sitting there. And so I'm going to start Baker over Dak. But you're right. It's the Vegas line that's keeping me from saying Dak's an outright sit, because I don't necessarily want to trust him until I see something more. This would be, by the way, this is the first time that he's had back-to-back games sub 20 fantasy points since week 4 and 5 of last year. So he was so good from that stretch early on.
Okay. We can speed up on the Cowboys, right? We're not trusting a running back yet.
Nope.
CeeDee Lamb is a must start. Is Brandon Cooks or Jalen Tolbert someone you're starting? And then give me your thoughts on Jake Ferguson real quick, Dave.
If Ferguson is active, you're starting him. I like him better than Andrews, Pitts, likely, and all the streaming tight ends. He's a top 6 tight end, partially by default, but also because I think he's going to get decent target volume. And I think he might be a key for Dak getting closer to 20 fantasy points against the Baltimore Ravens. Remember, last week he didn't have Jake Ferguson. Got decent numbers out of Schoonmaker, and CeeDee Lamb obviously had a big play against the Saints. But once it got one-sided, the Saints slammed the door on Dak, and he just did not have a good game. And I think you do have to throw out week 1. I don't think that should count either. But the other receivers, Cooks, I can't start him. Tolbert's interesting. I've got him stashed in a couple of deep leagues I'm in. But otherwise, I'm not looking to him to help my fantasy team this week either.
I think we need to change the phrase. So Dave said you have Tolbert stashed. We had Tolbert azered.
Oh man, this thing is gross. All right, last question here. This is from the chat. Start 2. Brian Robinson, Derrick Henry, or Jordan Mason?
I'm sending Henry.
I am sitting Henry. I've got Robinson one spot ahead of Henry.
Okay. All right, let's go to what's our next game? It is Houston at Minnesota. Minnesota, 21st in pass rate so far. And you thought, oh, maybe that was week 1. They were blowing out the Giants. Well, they were 17th against San Francisco in week 2. This team's usually close to first in pass rate. So that's the percentage of plays that they throw a pass. CJ Stroud is 6th for you guys. We'd like to see him have this big game. It hasn't happened yet. He's good against the Colts, not good against the Bears. Not that he's not playing well, just the fantasy points. All right, let's talk about Cam Akers here. So first things first, CJ Stroud is throwing to running backs more. His running back target rate's way up, but it's mostly been Mixon. He didn't really target Akers a lot. But if I guess, Jamie, just lay out the Texans running back situation as we sit here on Friday and Mixon and Pierce haven't practiced.
Yeah, assuming that Mixon and Pierce are out, I think Akers is a flex. I don't want to go all in on Cam Akers, especially after the fumble last week. Who knows how much that will come back to haunt him if he has another mistake. And like you said, in terms of the passing game production, I think it'll be Dario Gumbawale who will probably play on passing downs. So deep, desperate play, PPR, take a look at Ogunbowale, because if Akers, again, fumbles or for whatever reason they're chasing points, we could see Ogunbowale on the field a little bit more. But I would look at Akers as, someone that they're going to rely on in the run game. He looked good in the preseason, 7 for 32 last week, so the rushing average was there. Again, just the unfortunate fumble, but he's not Mixon. He's not Devin Singletary. He's not the, savior for your week, but he is a good plug-and-play option if you're stuck.
How did Jordan Mason do against the Vikings last week?
20 carries, 100 yards, and a touchdown.
This is the same type of scheme in Houston as the 49ers ran. So there is a chance here for Cam Akers to get a decent amount of work and to turn in a good stat line. But I agree, he's a flex play.
I think I am going to start him in several leagues. I picked up a lot of Cam Akers. Akers or Javonte Williams, PPR?
Right now, I would probably go Akers.
Yeah.
If Vea is out, I would go Javonte.
I think I might take Akers either way, because I don't think he's going to share with potentially, well, I guess he'll share a little bit with Ogunbowale, but I think Javonte could share with 2 other backs this week.
I am starting him over Carson Steele and DeAndre Hopkins in one league.
Yep.
Akers, Pirine, Dowdle, Mostert in non-PPR.
Mostert if he plays.
I think I'll take Akers.
Akers if he's out.
Would you start Akers over Dell or Diggs?
No, that's too far.
Okay. Tank Dell or Devin Singletary is a question we have here. PPR.
Dell.
Dude, you're starting a Dell.
All right. So those, Jamie said they're number 3, high-end number 3 receivers, Dell and Diggs. I think they're around 30th in the consensus rankings. Let's get a big game. Let's hope
there's a big game coming for Dell at some point.
Yeah, I know. Minnesota's defense is good, you know?
They blitz like crazy and they play good zone coverage behind.
And then, start Nico, sit Dalton Schultz, Sam Darnold. Someone asked earlier, Dak Prescott or Sam Darnold?
Dak. I think it's Dak.
Yeah, Darnold is, last I checked, he was 21st for Jamie, 17th for Dave, 16th for Heath. And then, all right, let's talk about Aaron Jones here. Certainly, I'm assuming you're going to start him over Cam Akers. Would you start Aaron Jones or Derrick Henry?
Derrick Henry.
Aaron Jones or Diggs and Dell?
Diggs and Dell in PPR, Jones in the other formats.
I've got Jones ahead of Diggs and Dell in PPR.
Yeah, this is a tough matchup. This is one of the best run defenses in football. Jonathan Taylor, 16 carries, 48 yards, and a touchdown. DeAndre Swift, 14 carries, 18 yards. Khalil Herbert did score a touchdown, but this was the case last year. It's the case this year. Very, very tough matchup. Jones did have 5 catches last week, so that's good.
That's what helps me start him over the receivers. He might have more catches than Diggs and Dell.
And then for Minnesota, start Justin Jefferson. Not expecting Addison, right? At this point?
Nope.
No, missed practice again on Thursday.
So how do you feel about Jalen Naylor, who's caught a touchdown in both games?
Desperation, 3rd receiver in 3 receiver leagues.
Like this game, it could be game of the week, but it feels like lower scoring. It's not going to be a fun fantasy game of the week. But this could
not
be
if the defenses show up.
The funny thing is, I think I might be overrating Minnesota. I might be getting a little ahead of myself here.
Maybe because they played the Giants and a beat up 49ers team?
Yeah. I mean, I think the win over San Francisco was impressive, but they kicked the crap out of the Giants. And their defense is playing really well, but Houston should handle them. What's the spread of this game?
I think Houston's 3-point favorites.
They are now 2-point favorites. All
2-point
favorites. Texans -2, and the total's 46. Okay, next game, Philadelphia's. Houston DST starter sit.
Low end starter.
Mm-hmm.
Philadelphia's at New Orleans. I've got a sort of not complex, but wordy stat of the game. Stat of the game number 1. The Eagles have thrown only one pass on 5 snaps inside the 5-yard line. No player has run more than one route. However, inside the 10-yard line, the Eagles are 11th in pass rate, and Dallas Goedert in 2 games has run 8 routes inside the 10-yard line. Last year, he ran 14 routes inside the 10-yard line in, I think, 13 games. So this was something that I was very curious to see, because that was the problem with Goedert, is that he never ran routes near the end zone, and that's why he doesn't ever catch touchdowns. So maybe Kellen Moore would change that. And so far, I think that is the case. 8 routes run inside the 10-yard line is a lot for a guy who averaged less than 1 per game last year at routes inside the 10-yard line. So my point is, people are dropping Dallas Goedert. I think he's about 85% owned at this point. They might be going to a streaming tight end like Gesicki or Freiermuth or Parkinson or something. Still no A.J. Brown, unlikely in this game here. Is that an overreaction? Should we give Dallas Goedert another chance?
Yes.
If you're streaming, yes.
Isaiah Likely or Dallas Goedert?
Likely.
I have Likely currently ahead of Goddard. I didn't know that stat that you just gave out. And I also don't know how good the Saints defense really is against tight ends. They took on Carolina in week 1, Dallas without Ferguson in week 2. I don't know. I kind of feel like Goddard is what he is, though.
Yeah,
he doesn't score.
Last week was
what he doing for you.
Last week was frustrating for 2 things. Obviously, there was more expectations without A.J. Brown there, but they used Calcaterra a little bit more than I wanted to see, and the targets were almost similar. Production was almost similar. So I think that's more of a Kellen Moore thing as opposed to a Jalen Hurts thing. So that just makes me a little hesitant. But I also think, and I said this last week, Adam, that after the game, like the Falcons may be a team that you don't want to play tight ends against with their safeties. Like those are 2 really good players that they have back there.
Yeah.
And Bates and
Simmons.
So
Right. They don't play man coverage very
no,
well.
but I'm just saying, like it's not easy to, as we've seen in 2 games so far, the tight end production against them has been minimal. So, do we give him a pass, Goddard? And I would say yes to the question that you asked. Like if you have a streaming option that you like, a la Isaiah Likely, if you picked him up, then yes, you play him over Goddard. But don't go drop Goddard yet for Pat Freiermuth or Jonnu Smith or Colby Parkinson. Like, give him another week.
I think he and Jonnu are kind of in the same boat. Hey, if he gave you 6 catches for 43 yards this week, no touchdown, you'd be pretty happy with Goddard, right?
Yeah.
So I kind of misspoke earlier because Ferguson didn't play, but that's what Luke Schoonmaker had against him, the Saints, last week.
But that was also, a Cowboys team that's still trying to figure out who's their second receiver, including Ferguson.
Yeah, well, I think the Eagles might be trying to figure that out too while A.J. Brown is out.
But they also have a running game.
They sure do. All right, so this total is 49.5. Dallas Goedert did get a target right at the goal line. I think he was interfered with on the play. They didn't call it. But I'm just saying there's a chance that he could score a touchdown. Don't necessarily write him off. Start Jalen Hurts. Start Saquon Barkley. Stat of the game number 2, Devontae Smith now going back to the start of 2023. He's played 5 games without either Goddard or A.J. Brown, and he has scored more than 20 fantasy points in PPR in 4 of those 5 games. The other game he scored 15.9. So he is top 8. He is an automatic start. That's the Eagles. So we talked about everybody on the Eagles, basically. All right, Derek Carr. We did discuss him in the one question for each game segment. That was Dave kind of took that one away. Jamie, you can give me 20 seconds on Derek Carr.
I mean, borderline must-start guy this week. So I agree with everyone that Dave said. I would probably still start Jane Daniels over him. That's the only one I disagree with, just because I think there's a higher ceiling for Daniels if he hits. But Carr's been great. So hopefully it's not a mirage, and he's going to get figured out as teams understand what they're doing and start to realize the Kubiak system for New Orleans. But you look at it right now, we haven't seen the best of Olave yet. We haven't seen the tight ends really involved. Week 1 they score touchdowns, but we haven't seen that wrinkle yet that may be coming with Taysom Hill. So I think this is an opportunity here against a defense that I don't believe in Philadelphia yet. So Derek Carr, top 10 upside for sure.
Start Kamara, start Olave. Is he a top? He's not in the top 12, Olave, right? He's just outside.
Top 20.
Top 15.
Okay. And then Shaheed, Jamie said he'd start Shaheed over Evans. Dave would not do that. Try to think of some flexes here, because definitely like Shaheed is going to be in the flex conversation, easily over Cam Akers. What about like Carson Steele or Rashid Shaheed? That's an easy one, right?
Shaheed or Steele.
All right,
And
so
Shaheed over the Texans guys too, not named Nico.
How about Brian Robinson versus Shaheed?
I mean, Robinson's got such a great matchup. Why would you go away from him?
The reason why I would go away from Robinson, it hypothetically, is what happened to Stevenson last night. Because I could see the Bengals blowing out the Commanders, and that doesn't necessarily take him off the field, but it takes him off the field a little bit, if not a lot. So that's.
I just don't think that the Bengals have the defense to blow out anybody.
Ooh, I don't know. I think they could blow out the Commanders. The Commanders are horrible, but fair enough. All right, so you'd start Robinson over Shaheed, Brian Robinson.
The Commanders are horrible. They should have scored some touchdowns last week.
They almost lost to the Giants.
Well, their defense is horrible too, but I don't think the Bengals are just going to completely dominate them.
Right,
no, I don't think so either. But they do have to let Jaden Daniels throw further downfield a little bit more than they have.
The Bengals are 7.5-point favorites at home. That's a bad spot for a starting running back. That's not
a bad spot for Rondre Stevenson in week 1 too, when they were 8.5-point underdogs at home.
I know we're expecting the Bengals to do better than they did in week 1. But.
Do you think the odds makers are trying to goad people into taking the Commanders and the points?
No, I don't play that game. I think I don't know what.
If Robinson wasn't involved in the passing game, I'd be a little bit more concerned. But I just think he's got so much upside based on what we've seen. Look what he did against Tampa Bay. It wasn't a huge game, but it was productive.
Yeah. No, it was a big game for him. He scored in that game. Okay, so anyway, you'd start Brian Robinson over Rashid Shaheed. You'd start Rashid Shaheed over Dell and Diggs. Here's one. Shaheed or London?
Shaheed.
London, but it's close.
Shaheed or DJ Moore from Todd?
Moore if Keenan Allen is out.
Any interest in a tight end for the Saints?
No.
Nope.
Okay. Sit the DSTs. Miami is at Seattle. Want some numbers here that are things that make you go, oh. This is Miami's receiving totals. 105 pass attempts from Skylar Thompson in 2022, including the playoffs. So 105 pass attempts. Let's call that 3 games worth of pass attempts. Probably even more than that, like 3.5 games worth of pass attempts.
Did you include the playoff game?
I did, yeah.
Okay.
Tyreek Hill had 20 catches for 171 yards. Just imagine him doing this in 3 games. 20 catches for 171 yards and no touchdowns on 35 targets. Jalen Waddle had 15 catches for 175 yards on 22 targets. Mike Gesicki had 9 catches for 113 yards and 2 touchdowns. It was ugly. That was in the 105 pass attempts. So I don't even know, man. Like, what are we doing here with Tyreek Hill? I was actually surprised you guys had Tyreek Hill in your top 8.
It's gross, but you know what Tyreek Hill's capable of.
Yeah, it's hope. It's hope that he's, still Tyreek Hill, that he gets some, wide receiver screens, some touches behind the line of scrimmage, that he's still going to be as involved as he typically is. Just you have to lower the ceiling. Waddle scares the hell out of me. I mean, he's played 8 games in his career without Tua, and he's averaging 5 catches and 56 yards in those 8 games. So and no touchdowns. So it's also a tough matchup. I mean, Seattle's defense has looked very good through 2 weeks. Now, granted, week 1 was not exactly the best of opponents, and I'm not even sure week 2 is, but it's still Skylar Thompson, and you just wonder, like, how much can Mike McDaniel get out of this offense without the play caller, without the quarterback there? His quarterback there. So it's nerve-wracking. You're not benching Tyreek Hill. Whether you call him top 8, top 20, top whatever, he's still in your lineup. Waddle, someone, unfortunately, you can get away from.
Can I give you the stat that made me move Tyreek Hill down outside my top 12?
Oh. Mm-hmm.
On throws of 15-plus air yards from Skylar Thompson, 8 targets, 0 catches, 0 yards, 0 touchdowns.
Yeah.
So
Gross.
you're hoping for that to somehow change against a good Seattle secondary, like Jamie said. I think they're good. Or you're hoping for him to make a big play after the catch. And I'm going to guess that Seattle's going to play their DBs back and try and corral these guys. And that includes just Achane as well, where they'll be okay giving up, plays of, anywhere from 5 to 15 yards at a time and then settle for field goals, hopefully, when they get in the red zone. But they don't want to give up the big play, even with Skylar Thompson there.
To be fair, Skylar Thompson was a rookie in 2022. He has been in the league. He could be better now. He may not be the same Skylar Thompson. I know it didn't look very good on Thursday night last week, but hopefully he can improve. Now, you're not sitting Devon Achane, right?
No, I actually think that this could be good for Achane.
Yeah.
The only downgrade would be is if Mostert plays, he just goes from top 5 to top 15.
And if Mostert plays, is he going to be a top 30 running back for you?
No.
I don't think so.
Okay. Jonnu Smith.
Well, you gave the stat about how Gesicki did with Skylar Thompson in 2022. And that just further encourages me a week after Jonnu Smith was used as a super short area target. Maybe he's a candidate for 5 catches and a good streaming tight end.
I'm going to do some questions here because people are going to have a lot of Dolphins questions. Waddle or Terry McLaurin?
McLaurin.
Jalen or JSN or Raheem Mostert?
Jackson, Smith, and Jigba.
There's another JSN question. JSN, Brian Thomas, Najee Harris, Devin Singletary.
JSN.
I might go with Thomas.
Close quarter says Skylar is going to surprise everyone.
I hope so.
He's going to jump out of a closet. A surprise!
Wearing a mask.
Hope he doesn't have a mustache.
Waddle or Khalil Shakir?
I currently have Waddle higher, but I may change it.
I have Waddle higher.
And
I do have JSN over Brian Thomas in full PPR.
And Cousin Ernest asks Vicar Ryan. I like it. I love it. All right, let's go over to the Seattle side with Geno Smith. Who would you start Geno Smith over?
Trevor Lawrence.
I don't mind that.
Cousins?
I'm starting over Jordan Love.
Over Cousins. I would
Over.
start Love if he's healthy.
Okay. He's about 15th in the rankings, Geno Smith. Good, not great start. Zach Charbonnet is top 12. He's the start of the week. Zach, ready? You probably don't have to make this decision. But if you did, Zach Charbonnet or Tyreek Hill?
Oh, boy. Tyreek in PPR. Tyreek in half PPR. Charbonnet none.
I'll take Tyreek.
Charbonnet pretty much gets 18 or more touches every single time he's the featured back. And look, people could say he's had some tough matchups when he's gotten the work. He has a long of 23 yards on 130 carries. So he's just hasn't been that good of a running back. I don't want to hear any more excuses. The Dolphins are giving up 5 yards per carry to running backs. If he goes out, he's still going to probably be good for fantasy, but if he goes out there and averages 3.5 yards per carry, I'm going to start worrying about this guy long-term, and at least he won't be a threat to Ken Walker, I wouldn't think, but start Zach Charbonnet. Metcalf a must start, and then JSN. So Dave, oh no, you do have him like 26, right? Heath is kind of lower on JSN.
Yeah, he's not changing his tune after last week.
All right, what did I have? JSN. I had a lot of JSN questions here, but I can't find them. While I try to find them, answer this one. Waddle or Zamir White?
Waddle.
Zamir non-PPR.
Jameson Williams or JSN? That was the one I was looking for.
Jameson.
Yeah, I don't really know what to say about.
Who's got more targets in 2 games? Because Jameson's got 20. JSN had 16. What did he have in week 1?
2.
Wow, 20 to 18. JSN really closed the gap quickly.
Yeah, and I think philosophically, if you're having that decision, then you might have to ask yourself, what is something that could derail a wide receiver? And it's lack of pass attempts. And who's more likely to be in a game script where they only have to throw 20 to 25 times? Geno Smith at home against the Dolphins or Jared Goff at Arizona, right? That could be something that leads you to Jameson Williams over JSN.
100%.
And expand that to any other wide receiver comparison you want to make.
To be fair,
they're close.
To be fair, what would you have said for pass attempts for Geno Smith last week against the Patriots?
Yeah, no, right. He threw 44, I think, in an overtime game. I get it. You can't predict. We're making guesses about everything, but that's just another way to think about wide receivers.
No, we know everything.
Yeah, and you're sitting Noah Fant, right? And you're sitting Tyler Lockett.
Noah, thank you.
And lock it down. Charbonnet or Etienne?
Charbonnet.
Zach Charbonnet.
Charbonnet start him over Carson Steele. JSN or Mike Evans?
Evans.
I'm not there yet with JSN, but they are very close.
Okay.
JSN will get more targets.
Would you trade Devin Singletary for Zach Charbonnet?
Yes, I would.
To help you win this week, why not?
Well, we don't know how long Walker may be out.
How many weeks will you feel confident starting Devin Singletary?
Yeah, rarely against Washington.
Bye-week replacement, and then when he plays the Commanders again?
Charbonnet or Michael Pittman?
Week 9.
Charbonnet.
Yeah, Charbonnet, baby.
Charbonnet.
All right, Detroit's at Arizona. We got 2 games left. Let's do this.
You missed your chance. You can't play it now. Nope, can't do
it. Is there another man? Starter sit. Oh wait, that was the wrong one. Starter sit. Come on, where's my? I'll get it. Starter sit.
And now he thinks he can just like break every rule with the soundboard.
No, I don't have. This is a bad joke. I'm not even going to do it. Starter sit. Jared Goff.
Low end starter. He's got to step up, man. He's had some good matchups at home. He's been over 300 yards in both games. Like, stop turning the ball over. Get some multiple touchdowns. Like, he's due.
And I'm not buying the Arizona defense just because they ripped up the Rams without Puka Nacua, mostly without Cooper Kupp, and behind a bad offensive line. Totally different situation. Goff's receivers are healthy. His offensive line's in good shape. He's a low-end starter. I'd start him over Dak.
But the situation last week could not have been better. Like, banged up secondary against Tampa Bay at home. They had time of possession so much in their favor, and he just couldn't get the job done. Like, it's just getting frustrating right now.
Too. Yeah, no, I get it.
I feel bad. I don't want to be that guy, but Goff threw for 217 yards in week 1.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
307 in week 2.
Be that guy, please.
Okay. Start Jahmyr Gibbs. Starters at David Montgomery.
I mean, I don't want to say must start guy, but you got to have a pretty good team to sit David Montgomery.
Number 2 running back as usual.
If he's getting involved in the passing game more, like, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that came with the territory with 55 pass attempts, though.
Right. I was going to say that. He had 4 catches last week for 35 yards. David Montgomery. Goff did throw 55 passes. Arizona, little storyline to watch. They were so bad against the run last year, but so far, James Cook, 3.7 yards per carry. Kyron Williams, 2.1 yards per carry. So we'll keep an eye on that. Like, it's tough. Montgomery's always tough when you compare him in full PPR to a guy like Rashid Shaheed, JSN. You know, like who do you start?
I would start Montgomery and non-PPR with both those guys easily. And half PPR, I might lean Montgomery also. Full PPR, I'd lean the receivers. The thing about Montgomery is I don't have it in front of me. It's like 4 games he hasn't scored a touchdown since being in Detroit. It's like he's always in the end zone.
Amazing. All right, start Amon-Ra St. Brown. Jamison Williams. I know you guys like Shaheed. Do you like Williams? You like Williams better, though, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so start Jamison Williams. He's basically right in the top 20 for everyone, or right around there. And then Sam Laporta. I feel like you have to start him. He's in your top 5. Is going to turn things around, Sam Laporta?
Man,
I wonder if he's playing
doing...
hurt. He doesn't look as explosive as he looked last year. And a lot of red zone snaps last week, and I think just 1 target on a throw that was high and behind him in the end zone. So I wonder if the combination of Jamison Williams becoming a thing and his own health keeping him from being like what he was last year, which was hyper efficient red zone weapon for the Lions. I mean, he had 8 touchdowns on 15 red zone targets last year.
Yeah,
it's pretty good.
Yeah, and he had a preseason injury. So,
right.
Yeah.
I'm still starting him. I still think he can be good. There aren't a lot of tight ends that are like definitely reliably better than Sam Laporta. He's 4th for me this week.
Kyler's top 5. James Conner is, worked his way into must-start status here. And Conner or Charbonnet?
Charbonnet.
But start Conner anyway. Start him.
They're back-to-back.
Marvin Harrison Jr., the only receiver you're starting for the Cardinals, I assume?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I do think that desperate play Greg Dortch. because last week they weren't in a competitive game. This week they will be.
Yeah, that's a good point. And sit the DSTs and start Trey McBride. And we got one more game. It's San Francisco at the Rams. I could go through, last 2 seasons with Deebo Samuel out or barely playing. In 2022, Brandon Ayuk, 4 games. He scored 20.1, 3.9, 13.1, and 26.7 PPR fantasy points. He was great.
So 13.1 or more in 3 of 4?
Yeah, and 20 or more in 2 of 4. That was 2 years ago. Last year wasn't nearly as good. Last year it was 11.6, 10.7, and 15.9. But he had 25 targets in 3 games. Had some tough matchups. Had no Trent Williams for 2 of those games. But also, like Christian McCaffrey, that's also a huge factor here. That guy got a ton of targets when Deebo was out. George Kittle got a ton of targets. It's like, I don't know, man. I'd have a hard time keeping Ayuk out of my top 12. I hope I don't have any Brandon Ayuk, and now I'm upset about it.
Think about how close he was to scoring in week 1 in his first game after barely practicing. And then he was close to scoring in week 2. So I think they can get that tightened up. This is a great opportunity to do it too, because the Rams offense, I don't think is going to be particularly effective. They still have offensive line issues. They clearly have issues at wide receiver, and their defense isn't that great. So this should be a game where the 49ers get right, and Ayuk should do well. He's 10th for me. I think that he's a must-start fantasy receiver.
And we answered that. Let's do the tough calls in this game, because we answered this earlier: Demarcus Robinson or Jawan Jennings. But you can answer it again.
I think it's fair to rank these receivers not named Brandon Ayuk, because there's a lot at play here with the Rams guys. Like, is this going to be Jordan Whittington stepping up with the injuries there? Is it going to be Tyler Johnson stepping up with the injuries? Is Tutu Atwell stepping? Like, there's a lot of 14-team, 16-team flyer potential here and DFS plays here. So for me, it's Ayuk, Robinson, Jennings, Whittington, Johnson, Atwell.
I think that's exactly how I have it. But Ayuk's the only one with a top 36 rank.
Yes.
Okay. I think it definitely forced.
Robinson's in my top 36.
I'm forced to start Robinson in a few 3 receiver leagues. One question from the chat: Demarcus Robinson or Zamir White?
Robinson or Zamir White?
Yeah.
This has to be a Zamir White game. Like, it has to be. So I would bank on matchup.
Okay. And then start George Kittle if he plays. If he doesn't, was it Eric Saubert?
He's in the mix. Braden Willis could be called up from the practice squad.
Saubert had 2 catches last week.
Gets a couple of those targets, but the bottom line is that you shouldn't start any of them.
I was gonna say Kyle Juszczyk, is he a sleeper? Because, like, what does he have? He has 8 targets in 2 games, and they're gonna need to throw it to someone. But I can't imagine you're gonna be starting Kyle Juszczyk. Jordan Mason, you are starting. Brock Purdy or Geno Smith?
Geno
for sure if there's no Kittle.
Yeah, okay. What if there is Kittle, Purdy or Geno?
I would still go Geno.
Okay. Someone's asking Purdy or Daniels. Definitely going Jaden Daniels. Or try to sit Brock Purdy. You know, it's tough for him right now.
If Kittle's like he gets full practice in, then I would be fine with Purdy, not over Jaden Daniels. But
you have any hesitation on Kyren Williams this week?
Yes.
Yes, to the point of like top 5 caliber running back, but still he's going to get fed targets. He's going to get involved in the passing game.
Yep. In the second half without Cooper Kupp, Kyren Williams was tied for the team lead in routes run, and he had 4 targets in the second half alone. He's not.
What did we see in week 1, right? Breece Hall big in the passing game against this defense. Last week it was Aaron Jones involved in the passing game. And then I know game script mattered, but Chandler was just running free.
Well, yeah, the Rams offensive line, though, is so beat up.
They are getting all Eric Jackson back, though, so that's big.
It's nice that they've got him back at tackle, but the interior of that line is really, really ugly. And the Niners know that they haven't been good against the run the first 2 weeks of the season. This is a chance for them to get right there, too. Williams is a number 2 RB for me.
Okay, so we'll start Charbonnet over him, but we won't start Steele or Akers. Fair?
Definitely
right?
not Steele or Akers. I struggle with Kyren Williams versus Dobbins versus Brian Robinson. Derrick Henry you can throw into that group. That they're all in that early mid RB2 range.
Yeah, I would go Robinson, Williams, Dobbins, Henry.
I'm sorry. Any interest in Colby Parkinson?
I mean, he's going to get targets. It's just a matter of will he do anything with it. So, like, Jonnu's better. Fryermuth better. Goddard obviously better.
I'll take Parkinson over Jonnu.
You
Buster.
want to do
I
another
won't.
mustache
I'll
bet?
take Jonnu.
I'll do a bet. It's not going to be a mustache bet, but this is a huge bet with a lot at stake. Jonnu Smith versus Colby Parkinson. I will take
Shave your eyebrows.
Colby. Oh, gosh. Gentleman's bet. And that's in Start the 49ers DST.
I don't know if I'm qualified to make that bet.
Yeah,
Winnington's a stash, by the way.
Brenton Strange. Somebody has a good question. Brenton Strange or Colby Parkinson or Jonnu Smith?
Jonnu.
Jonnu, Colby, Strange.
I might put Strange over Colby.
Yeah, boy. You guys, no respect for Colby Parkinson.
None.
Well, thank you guys for a wonderful show. We've got a lot of programming for you. Mailbag in an hour. And HQ and CBS Sports Network. And then, you know what's coming up on Sunday and all that stuff. So for Jamie and Dave, I'm Adam. Thanks for watching. We'll talk to you tomorrow on Fantasy Football Today.